Thank you very much, Chairman Barrasso and Vice Chair Tester, for focusing on this very, very important issue to the West and to the rest of the nation. In the West, our rivers are our lifeline. This is especially true for the Navajo Nation, which depends on limited surface water resources. The San Juan River is crucial. It brings water for drinking, irrigation, and recreation, and has the cultural and religious significance, has great cultural and religious significance to the Navajo people. So the federal government must own up to this tragedy, and I'm encouraged that we have the administrator with us, and she has taken responsibility for this accident. Those on the Navajo Nation and others affected by this spill must be compensated, and I will be introducing legislation on that front with Senator Heinrich. The Navajo Nation has been on the receiving end of disasters like this, brought on by the federal government and others for far too long. Mistakes have been made. We need to do everything in our power to make sure they are not made again. I recently visited the area to speak with President Begay, who we will hear from on the second panel, the newly inaugurated President of the Navajo Nation, Speaker Lorenzo Bates, Attorney General Branch, and Gilbert Harrison, and others like Mr. Chiliazzi of Shiprock, who I see here today. I heard their concerns, I saw the terrible impact the spill was having, and I saw firsthand that farming for Navajo people is not only critically important to food production, it also impacts the traditional teachings of young people who are finding their identity through agriculture. It's easy for Washington to expect things to return to normal in due time, but it is clear this disaster will continue to affect the Navajo people for a very long time. How did this happen, and how did we get to this point? Sad to say, the Gold King abandoned mine is only one of several abandoned mines which are leaching pollutants into the Animas River. And there are thousands, some estimates on a nationwide basis from 160,000 to 500,000 of these abandoned mines, which are hurting and threatening waterways throughout the Rocky Mountain Range and the rest of the country. When we talk about public lands in the West, this is the legacy of the 1872 mining law, an ancient law which encouraged exploration for hard rock minerals, but did nothing to compensate the public for the extraction of valuable minerals. And on top of that, did nothing to require mines to clean up after they finished. And that's the legacy of what we're seeing here today. The result, thousands of abandoned mines on public land, contaminated land, polluted streams, and the taxpayers having to pay for the cleanup. I believe in the principle of polluter pays. Other, more recent laws have enshrined this principle. Polluter pays. But we are stuck with the 1872 mining law, which requires none of this. And that is what these big mining companies are doing, refusing reform, refusing to pay. Some of the people that have looked at this area say the 1872 mining law and its supervision of mining is some of the laxest public oversight of any industry. We cannot continue that way, and I would just hearken back. I remember it was before I got into the House. Some of the senators on this panel were probably there in the House or in the Senate, but Newt Gingrich saw the ripping off of the taxpayers and passed a bipartisan bill through the House of Representatives reforming the 1872 mining law, and it had a 300-vote margin. So this can be done if we put our heads together and work with each other, and I'm very encouraged that we have a bipartisan effort here on the committee, and look forward to working with our Colorado senators who were impacted, and then the flow came into New Mexico. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, again for focusing on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and Administrator McCarthy, thank you so much. I know you testified this morning extensively in your authorizing committee, the Environment and Public Works Committee. You have also agreed to come here and testify, which, as you and I talked, the Native American community across the country views this committee as a great oversight entity, and we very much appreciate having you here today. I understand that the EPA is processing claims for damages under the Federal Tort Claims Act, and there are advantages to this in that the U.S. Judgment Fund does not require further appropriation to compensate people. However, under normal circumstances, federal agencies try to limit their tort liability. That is the natural position of any defending party in a tort claims process. I do not believe that is appropriate in this kind of situation, and that is why we are introducing legislation to separately guide the compensation process with a dedicated office at EPA. Do I have your commitment that you will work diligently with the Navajo and all other victims of this spill so that all legitimate damage claims are handled quickly and appropriately without the agency trying to avoid responsibility?
You do, Congressman, yes.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to get your commitment here at the hearing that EPA is dedicated to prioritizing funding and resources for long-term monitoring of the river and for compensation for those impacted.
That is our responsibility, and we will meet that.
Thank you. And I understand from the crisis and from other past incidents there has not always been a tremendous amount of trust between EPA and the Navajo Nation, although I know you have a good working relationship. The Navajo Nation has one of the most sophisticated EPAs of any tribe in the country, and you work together. Are you willing to ensure third-party verification and validation on issues that may require analysis and data?
We are beginning those conversations today. Well, we've already begun them, and you have my word that we will continue to work with the President as well as Dr. Ben. I have great respect for both the leadership of the tribe and for their technical expertise, and we will work together to resolve these issues.
Thank you. The President of the Navajo Nation has requested that EPA designate the Upper Animas District as a Superfund site. I support this and believe it should be a priority for funds and remediation. Where does the EPA stand on this question? If it was designated on the national priorities list, how would that translate to help for the Navajo Nation, which is located south of the area?
Well, we certainly will take that request seriously. We, in fact, had Maddie Stanislaus, who is our Assistant Administrator, was actually down in Colorado discussing this very fact and this very issue with Durango and some of the surrounding communities. It's extremely important, and it's something that we have been actually soliciting interest of for many, many years. Because we think it's the only way that you're going to get significant federal funding to support those cleanup efforts. In short of some other congressional action, there is simply no way to hold those, to pass that job off to somebody else.
And my understanding, there are recent press reports where all of you are at the EPA are trying to organize in the valley there some treatment so that you talked about the 330 million gallons that, to get a treatment process so we can restore those streams. Is that part of the Superfund, or is that just under your responsibilities right now without a listing?
Well, you know, we are going to continue to work with the state of Colorado and all of the folks downstream to look at what we do to address those upstream issues. You know, part of the challenge we created with this spill was to see through both the cleanup of the spill, but also to get another level of seriousness about getting at the entire comprehensive Animas watershed. And so what we're doing right now is to develop a long-range monitoring plan and to do that in concert with all of the surrounding communities who will provide input. And that's one of the issues that we're trying to make sure that the Navajo feels comfortable weighing in on, and they have an ability to have their voice into that issue. It's going to be extraordinarily important that we get that started soon.
Thank you very much, Madam Administrator, for those very forthright answers.
Thank you, Senator Udall.
Thank you, Chairman Barrasso, and let me also echo what Senator McCain said. We very much appreciate your leadership, President Begay. You've given a very passionate statement today on behalf of your people and have shown just very forthright, shown to be a very forthright and excellent advocate for the Navajo people, and I also think the government-to-government relationship could have been done much better, and we're going to stand with you to make sure that it improves every day into the future as you go through and work through all these difficult issues. You mentioned in your testimony, you said the Navajo people, they need compensation and they need it now. What advice are you giving individual Navajos, President Begay, on what they should do in order to, I know you've given some strong advice on the Form 95, but what should they do in terms of trying to get together the information to get it into the EPA? What advice are you giving there?
Well, first of all, we're asking the EPA, this committee, to lean heavily on EPA to waive that waiver of final settlement. When our people get a check from EPA for 1 week of hauling water, paying for hay, is that will be the end of their settlement. That will end the amount of monies that EPA will pay them, and that will be the end of it. But this is we know that this loss is going to continue, not just for a month or 3 months or this farming season. They themselves told us, EPA told us, that the cleanup will take decades. That's what they said to us verbally. And so taking that to heart is that our people will hurt and suffer economically from this for decades. But we're saying to them, keep close record of what you spent already. Take photos of your crops. Take photos of you hauling water, and keep close records of this, and go ahead and start filling out the standard Form 95, but don't sign it. We're asking EPA, we're asking members of this body right here to make sure that we are given an interim form to use, not that particular form, but we need an interim form that our people can use so that they're compensated for their losses this week and next week and months after. So that is what we're saying to them. And we would really greatly appreciate this committee to help us put that waiver language in that form so our people will be justly compensated for all their losses.
Thank you. Now, you've urged the EPA to designate the Upper Animas as a Superfund site, and that's something that I support. Can you tell us the importance this action would have to the Navajo Nation?
Well, the EPA, they were told that this blowout was going to happen, that it was going to happen soon. And they didn't take care of business. They didn't address it adequately. I stood at the mouth of the mine with a worker telling me what he was doing when this spill took place. An EPA worker, over 40 years working for EPA, was a person working the backhoe when this spill took place. He retold the story to me step by step on how this all happened. And he said there are other mines on the other side that's about to do the same thing. We know it, EPA knows it, but nothing is being done about it. So it is urgently, it is urgent that EPA addresses, and they address it now, because there's another disaster of this proportion that is ready to happen. And so we are saying, declare that Superfund site, deal with it, clean it up, because we're the ones that will suffer in the long run. And it is astounding for me to sit here this day to hear that 330 million gallons pour out of those mines every year. And where do they go? They come on to the Navajo Nation land. We are becoming a waste dump for those contaminants, and I'm astounded to hear that being repeated over and over and over from our leaders, from the EPA, and no one has stopped to say, where are they going? And I will say that even though the 300 plus million gallons that pour out every year is not yellow like it was when a large amount came at one time, those need to be cleaned up, and it needs to be cleaned up by the EPA. They need to clean up their mess. Thank you.
Thank you, President McGay. Also, Chairman Barrasso, the chairman, the speaker of the Navajo Council was unable to be here with us. His name is Lorenzo Bates, and he asked that his testimony be submitted for the record.
Without objection.
Submit that for the record. Thank you very much, Chairman Barrasso. Let me thank you again, because you have been very thorough about this hearing and very patient in terms of getting in all the testimony, and really appreciate it. And I appreciate the entire panel here. We have one additional person here who I mentioned earlier. He's a chapter president, Chili Yazzie, and I've talked to the chairman. He wants to proceed under the rules, and I understand. So I'm going to read. Chili Yazzie has done a statement, President Begay, as you know, and I'm going to just read his statement into the record. He says, and this is from the chapter president, who this chapter, as President Begay knows, was very impacted. I greet you as relatives, as five-fingered human beings, as brothers and sisters of the same earth, mother, and the same Father, Creator. Through our ways of reverence, we have our special names for the great Creator, including God the Almighty. We know Him as Dizin. Our Creator stories say He formed mounds of clay and breathed life into them. Thus, we have an intrinsic and undeniable relationship with the earth, and we are of the earth, and we return to the earth. The earth belongs to all of us, and we belong to the earth, just as a child and a mother belong to each other. The teachings of our peoples concur in that God is everywhere. God, the Creator, inhabits the vast expanse of His creation. His essence permeates through the earth. Thus, the earth has spirit, it has life, it breathes and feels pain as we do. It is no misnomer that we refer to her as our Earth Mother. She has unfailingly provided for all our needs, but we are failing her as the stewards we are supposed to be. As parents, we have an unconditional love for our children, and as grandparents, we have the greatest hopes for the future of our grandchildren. That is our common bond. We may have traveled different paths of history, but we have a common future, and humankind, we share a common destiny. Our indigenous choice is that we want our earth to survive, as her life is our life. It is clear that exponentially increasing exploitation of the earth is ebbing her life, and thus accelerating the closure of our collective life. And as the original landlords of these lands, we stand in defense of our earth. We choose to defend her life and the life of our life. We implore of you, with a focus on the future of our coming generations, let us reason together, let us stand together for the life of our Earth Mother and the lives of our children. And that was chapter president. The chapter, as the President Begay knows, is the local form of government. His chapter was very impacted by this. His name is Dwayne Chili Yazzie, and I would just ask that his full statement be put in the record, and appreciate your courtesies, Mr. Chairman.